right. Woo. Happy Friday, everybody. All right, all right. Happy Friday, you magnificent melon heads. Hope everybody is doing well today. I hope you're all enjoying the prelude to World War III. That's what we got going on right now. A lot of history happened this week, folks. A lot. The history books are being written right now as we speak. It's not good. It's not good what's being written. I'm just going to throw that out there. I am seeing a lot of parallels to some very dark periods in history from previous centuries. And that pipeline, hitting that pipeline was such a huge pivotal event. I cannot overstate the importance of the attack on that pipeline and what that was. That pipeline was one of the things that was pulling the world back towards reason, all right? That pipeline was a way to get energy to Europe this winter. That was a potential reward for de-escalation, right? That was one of the things that was bringing us more towards peace, all right? And say what you want about how bad one side is or how bad the other side is, right? The comments are just loaded with that. I'm sure the comments in this live stream are going to be full of that garbage about what aboutism and they invaded them and they did that and you bombed them and they did that. I get all of that, all right? Fact is, that pipeline was one of the things that was potentially rewarding cooler heads. And now it's gone. It is no longer one of the benefits of not killing each other. It's off the table now. So attacking that pipeline, I cannot overstate. That was a entirely evil act. All right? Attacking that pipeline weaponized the suffering of Europeans this winter. And make no mistake, there will be suffering all over Europe this winter because of what happened to that pipeline. All right? Now, maybe it would have happened already. That pipeline was already shut down. There was already no gas flowing through it. Okay? So there's been no real change to the energy dynamic from the attack on that pipeline. But the possibility of it improving is now gone. All right, so there's that. It was just that was an evil act. Whoever did it. All right, and again, the comments in this stream, they're going to be just loaded with it. All the partisans on both sides are going to be piling in, and all the trolls and all the whatever, they're all going to be there. Thanks for the engagement. I'll take it. It helps me with the algorithm. As much as I hate to hear it and hate to read it, but it helps with the algo, so I'll take it. But there's another big deal here, another real escalation, and that means that energy infrastructure, civilian energy infrastructure off the battlefield is now a legitimate target. This pipeline did not run through Ukraine. Pipeline didn't even run through Russia. From Russia, sure. But this was off the battlefield. All right, so the battlefield has been expanded, and it's been expanded in a big way. Now, energy is a weapon. Destroying energy infrastructure is a tactic. And regardless of who started it and who did it, it's fair game now. It's on the board. And I just want to remind you guys, World War II was already going on when America got involved, right? Most Americans think World War II started in 1941. No. That war started way before 1941, all right? Poland had already been invaded, right? Europe was already at war. China had been invaded by Japan, right? The fighting was well underway. But that's when the U.S. entered the war. And the reason why, or one of the reasons why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor was because the U.S. had embargoed oil. We had cut off Japan from oil as part of punishment for Japan's actions elsewhere in the world. Regardless of whether or not you think that action was justified, that forced Japan's hand because now Japan needed to take oil fields elsewhere in the world to supply their own energy. All right? And the U.S. Pacific Fleet was an impediment to capturing those oil fields, even though Japan wasn't technically at war with the U.S. at the time. So Japan decided they could take the American fleet off the board in one fell swoop by attacking Pearl Harbor. Now, that was a miscalculation. They didn't get our aircraft carriers, and then the whole war in the Pacific started. Shortly thereafter, we declared war on Germany and vice versa. and the rest is history. But it was that oil embargo that is widely recognized as what pushed Japan over the edge to making the attack on Pearl Harbor necessary from their standpoint. And whoever did that to that pipeline just made that same historic mistake. All right. And now that energy has been weaponized, look out, folks. Look out, because the energy situation is volatile, to say the least. And remember, energy means fertilizer, energy means food. It's all derivatives of energy. And it's not just the people on the battlefield that suffer. I've been saying that on this channel for a while, that most of the casualties from this war will not be on the battlefield. They'll be off the battlefield. And I got my man Cheeseburger. Thank you, Cheeseburger, for the super chat. As always, sir, generals gathered in their masses. I hear da-na-da-na, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds plot death destruction, source. Evil minds plot destruction, source of death construction. Who was the original of that? Was that Black Sabbath? I think it was Black Sabbath. I remember the Faith No More cover of this one, but that was a little before my time. I think it was Sabbath. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's amazing. The more things change, the more they stay the same, isn't it, Cheeseburger? We are being marched off, folks. We are being fed into a meat grinder by both our sides. And, well, I'm going to get a little fired up today. I'm going to try not to get myself in trouble. Thank you again, Cheeseburger, for the support of the channel. And by the way, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. That hasn't changed. Anyway, let's say hello to my man, Mish, and let's get some screens up here and take a look at what the markets are doing today. Mish, how we doing?
I'm doing great today. How you doing, sir?
I am doing good. And got to say, hashtag where's Mish? Where you at, brother?
I am southeast Nebraska.
Southeast Nebraska. If you can track Mish down somewhere in SENE, he's got a Merc Dime for you.
Got a Merc Dime for you. Find Mish in the wild for a Merc Dime. It's a Mish Mark.
The Mish Merc? One
Mish
Mish Merc. We're making our own currency here. All right, folks, let's take a look. What is going on in the indexes right now? I have got the S&P. It was up earlier in the day. Not so much now. Down 32 points to 3608. The Dow is down big now. Another 340 points, or minus 1.17%. Sitting at 28,884. Down below 29K. And the NASDAQ leading the way down to 10,655. Down 82 points, or 0.77%. Looking to close at the lows of the week. And where is it? I got my NASDAQ chart up here. I drew this one. It was either Tuesday morning or last Friday. We drew this purple line. That marks your low. Let me shrink the momentum indicators here a little bit to make a better chart. This purple line down here, that marks the low from back in June was it July? June 14th. That was the low that we last hit, and we are now within just a couple of points of that. I think I actually drew the line a little bit. I did draw it a little low. That was the close, and we're sitting right on top of it. And this is pretty much the last line of resistance right here, folks. And I've been saying don't look down, because you got to zoom way out on the chart to find your next level of support if we keep heading lower. Because if we break below this, I'll be honest with you, I think we're heading back to those March of 2020 lows, folks. I really think that is in play here. Now that we're hearing things like liquidity being strained, that fiasco in the UK with the pension system, which, by the way, everything that happened in the UK could happen here. We use that same LDI strategy, that same liability-driven investment, and the use of rate swaps and derivatives to gain leverage to try to keep those pensions fully funded because they've been so underfunded for so long. We make the same mistakes here. Don't think what just happened in the UK can't happen here. And the Fed is saying they're not going to pivot. The BOE never even got to tightening, and they pivoted. So keep your eye on that.
We'll see in 4 to 6 weeks. We'll be able to revisit this, I think.
Yeah. Hey, it might. Things are happening fast right now. It might be even faster than 4 to 6, Mish. We could see this next week. I don't want to get too bad, but U.S. LNG to the rescue, says Jose Orozco. May God help us all. LNG can help, Jose, but keep in mind, liquefied natural gas, what goes into making LNG, which is a stock I still don't have any disclosure, full disclosure. I don't have any position in LNG yet, which is a ticker for Cheniere Energy. LNG is also an acronym for liquefied natural gas. Um, it can help. U.S. LNG can offset the loss of that, but U.S. LNG is 6 or 7 times more expensive than pipeline gasoline or pipeline natural gas. So U.S. LNG may be able to help, but it is not a long term solution. Definitely not. Europe is going to have to figure their stuff out. That's all I can say. And not just U.S. LNG, Qatari LNG and Australian LNG. Keep that in mind too. The LNG market, the U.S. is the biggest player in the global LNG market, but there's two other major players. There's Australia and there's Qatar. And that Qatar, we're going to talk a little bit about Qatar because there could be a problem brewing there. But thank you very much, Jose, sir, the keeper of the Bucky's Corn Nuggets. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel as always. And I do hope the LNG is somehow able to offset the pain. And there is Crushing Bear, formerly Miracle Oil, says, "Hi, Jack. Thank you for hinting not to touch Nike." That's right. I did talk about not touching Nike last week. Yeah, I forget about it. I talk about so many things during these live streams. I forget sometimes. Who knows how many times I've contradicted myself. I hope I don't do that. But I do remember the comment about Nike, and I said I didn't like that one last week. He said, "My puts are printing this morning for the upcoming quarter. Will you please do a video like the one you did, like Netflix before?" I remember that one. "Will you close your puts as this market looks oversold?" I'm not closing my puts just yet. Now, let me put this in perspective here. I bought my puts out to January for a reason. I didn't want to play ultra short term because I got caught up the last time I went short the indexes. I did it right before that bear market rally and I got burned. So I decided this time I was going to take my index shorts out far enough where if we got into another one of those bear market rallies, I could just weather the storm and go right through it and still come out on the other side because I think the market is still going much, much lower. There may be some more of these little rallies in between here and there. They could be a day, a week, a month, but overall the index is still going lower. So I don't plan on unloading those puts for a couple of months. I'm going to stay in that position for a while. I may start new ones, in the interim, some more short dated ones, a little more targeted, but that's kind of a medium trade. My puts are all the way out to January on that one. So I don't have any plans to close that anytime soon because I think between now and January, there's a lot of bad is going to happen. But thanks for reminding me about that Nike call. If Nike got absolutely crushed today. Their inventory is blowing out. People are not buying apparel because inflation, eating heat, folks. That's where the money's going. It's not going to nice new Nike Air Jordans. It's not going to any of that stuff. And the world is.
They're not going to be alone for
What's
long.
that now?
They're not going to be alone for long in this situation.
And, another thing to keep in mind is the world is deglobalizing, and Nike has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of globalization. They've outsourced their labor to Southeast Asia to take advantage of the cheap labor. Well, those labor costs are rising right now, and the geopolitical tension means their supply chain is no longer safe. So Nike has some very expensive changes to their business model on the horizon. So this is not a short-term thing for Nike. I think Nike long-term has some real problems to deal with. Thank you very much, Crushing Bear. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. And there's my man, Mike Robin. Mike Binder, I called him Mike Robin again. It just wouldn't be a Friday live stream if I didn't get your name wrong, Mike. But thank you very much for the super chat again. Big bubble methane bath. Who's going to borrow for buying Christmas iPhones? Apple makes up 13% of the NASDAQ. I'll be lucky if I have lights on for Christmas. That's a great point. An iPhone is a luxury item by any measure. And, what are you going to cut? Are you going to spend $1,100, $1,300? What's the new version of the iPhone? I mean, this is the cheap one. This is the is this the SE2? I don't. It's their economical. I'm a cheap guy. That's just me. And honestly, I didn't even pay full price for this. I got 50% off of this because I'm a first responder, and AT&T has a pretty good deal with first responders because we have priority service. If something happens like on 9/11, all the phones went down because everybody was on the phone talking about what was happening. And the first responders couldn't get the calls. The firefighters, the police, the EMS weren't getting called in when they needed to be. So they created this little network for first responders that's outside of the main network. And so because of that, I get cheap access to cell phones and I get priority service and all that good stuff. Anyways, I'm not spending $1,500 or $2,000, whatever they're charging for these new things. Definitely not. I mean, I wouldn't do that on a good day. And I would imagine other people are very quickly becoming as cheap as I am because the situation demands it. I do it by choice, not because I have to. Other people are going to have to. And no, they're not going to be spending all that money on iPhones. It's a good point, Mike. Apple's going down. They're heading a lot lower. And speaking of beneficiaries of globalization, Apple is another one. Apple has some real hard choices to make. They're going to have to upgrade their supply chain or risk not having one, especially if this geopolitical mess continues. So they're going to have to make investments in more expensive labor and more expensive production. So they have some rethinking to do. Thank you very much, Mike, for the support of the channel and for the super chat. And thank you, Cheeseburger, again. LDI risk to U.S. pensions are causing Fed pivot equals Manarino's original hypothesis of inflation and record stock market highs or no. So this is a hard one, all right? This is a hard one. My gut tells me they will eventually pivot, all right? And a lot of people think the pivot is very close. I do not think the pivot is close for the U.S., all right? The Bank of England threw in the towel real fast. But the Bank of England is not defending global reserve currency status. We are. And, the last time the Fed pivoted, they didn't have the inflation problem to worry about. So if the Fed pivots, they are embracing inflation. They're institutionalizing inflation. And right now, there has still been no change in the language. Even this week, they had all their Bullard and Brainerd and all of them were all out this week jawboning. No dovishness from any of them. So the Fed is still fully engaged hawk right now. There is no sign whatsoever of any pivot from the Fed. And the Fed does not make decisions like that very abruptly. They did it in September of 2019. They did it when the overnight lending rate sparked, but they've already created the repo facility to accommodate that. And also keep in mind the Fed has one secret weapon. They have the reverse repos. All right, and let's bring that up while we're here. I don't have that chart up, but let's bring that chart up because this one is still out there. And, oh, by the way, it's sitting at a record high right now, as Mish the Mod pointed out today, $2.425 trillion. I would expect that spike because it's the last day of the quarter. So we're probably going to see one more really big data point in the reverse repos because you get a lot of transactions, a lot of things moving around. You tend to get these big spikes at the end of the quarter, like this big spike right here. This was New Year's Eve. Right, end of the quarter, this big spike right here, that was September 30th of last year. So if you go back on this reverse repo chart, you'll always get these big spikes at the end of the quarter. That being said, this is almost $2.5 trillion of money that exists outside the financial system. It might as well be on Mars. And the Fed has this. The Bank of England didn't have this. If they just stop paying interest on this money, they can drive $2.5 trillion back into the Treasury market. So this is a huge liquidity sponge right now. This is the Fed's secret weapon, and they haven't started deploying it yet. They haven't started playing this card yet. All right, the clock on the pivot doesn't start until we see this chart start trending down in a big way. That's when the clock starts on the pivot. That's my personal opinion. I know Joe Brown over at Heresy Financial, he's been saying the same thing. So keep an eye on this reverse repo chart. This is liquidity that the Fed can inject without actually printing money. Now, that will be inflationary, but that wouldn't be a full-blown Fed pivot. So keep an eye on that. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Cheeseburger. And Manarino's original hypothesis of inflation bringing the market to record highs, that is one of two possible outcomes, all right? The market is either going to record highs or the market is going, or we're going into a second Great Depression, all right? I don't know which one they're going to pick. It's not up to me, all right? If it's, what does the government and the powers that be, what do they value more, the reserve currency status or everything else? It's a legitimate argument. I don't know the answer to that, all right? So try to position yourself or hedge yourself accordingly and just read the tea leaves and see which way it's heading, because I can't make that call right now, Cheeseburger. I just don't know which one they're going to pick. And Mr. AK, thank you, AK, says British Army Chief warns UK and allies facing 1937 moment. Holy, 1937 was a big deal, folks. Again, World War II didn't start in 1941. YouTube 30-minute pep talk. It's not good. Take a look sometime. All right, I haven't seen that one, AK, but thank you for pointing that out. And that is a scary time. You know, I was talking with Joe Brown from Heresy Financial the other night. Joe is a really nice guy, and every now and then there's stuff that I see that just doesn't make sense to me. Joe's a really good soundboard, and he's always willing to talk. So, by the way, check out Heresy Financial. I love that channel. Highly recommend it. And, we were kind of talking, and Joe mentioned something. He said we're 4 or 5 years away from the worst of it. It was something like that he said. He did mention like we're like 5 years away from the worst of the worst. Things are still getting worse, folks. And I remember I said to him, I was like, all right, 5 years away. So that makes it 1939. That's the number that I thought of right off the top of my head when I said it was 1939. And here you're saying it's 1937, or the British guy saying 1937. The historical parallels, folks, they're there. We are making the same stupid mistakes all over again. But thank you, AK, very much. I appreciate the support of the channel, guys. Thank you for your generosity, as always. Free like summer. Thank you, sir. He says, hey, JG, please buy an extra tuna can with my euro pegged and quickly depreciating fiat. That was funny. Appreciate the chuckle, free like summer. He says, elections again in 2 days here in Bulgaria. Happy weekend. All right. I haven't been following the electoral situation in Bulgaria. Honestly, I just don't know enough about what's happening in that part of the world. I should. But I hope things go all right for you guys. And thank you very much for your euro pegged and quickly depreciating fiat. And, all right, man, a can of tuna. I got to go buy a can of tuna this weekend. Will do, sir. While that will still cover a can of tuna, who knows, by next week, who knows what a can of tuna is going to cost. And Jose's back. He says, random thought. I'm curious, what sorts of QA soccer trophy, that's interesting, ads there will be this year? GoFundMe ads for food and energy throughout the world. But seriously, that's interesting.
Remember,
because
we used to have rent parties in the 90s.
Rent parties?
Yeah, you'd actually charge your friends to come like see somebody talk or watch a movie or something to cover your rent.
Oh, all right.
It became like a communal thing.
We're going to need a bigger party this time around. Have you seen what the rent has done?
Yeah. That's
what
Jose, for food reminds me of.
Yeah. And you made a good point there, Jose. Like, charities around the world are really going to be taxed, because if you are a 501c3 in the States, we call it as a charity organization. If you're one of these groups that does things like this, people are getting poorer. So the supply of donations to your organization are really being stressed right now. If you're a charitable organization, and at the same time, demand for your services is exploding higher as more and more people are driven into poverty. So, you're talking about things like GoFundMe. We're going to see a lot of GoFundMes over the next couple of years. We're going to see a lot of them. We're going to see a lot of charities are going to be hard pressed. People are going to have to make tough decisions. And, I used to do a lot of work with the United Way back in my old place where I used to live. When I was working at the nuclear plant, we worked very closely with the United Way. I sat in on some of those meetings where they had to decide which organizations they were going to fund that year and who they were not going to fund. I don't ever want to go to one of those meetings again, because it sucks to be in a position where you have to say these people get money and these people don't. And a lot of these charities are going to be in that situation in the next couple of months and years. It's going to get bad. So hats off to anybody who does that kind of volunteer work, because that sucks. That is an emotionally draining experience to do that, and people have to make those decisions. So thank you very much, Jose. I appreciate that very much, sir. And there is Mr. Cormac Kilroy. Thank you, Cormac. He says, Jack, sitting in a mobile home in Ireland, fuel in, food in, stocked. Advise the rest of European people to do the same. I might even mention a floating mobile home, Cormac Kelly, and float yourself across the pond. Get off that continent. Nothing good is going to happen on that continent this winter. But, your congratulations, your food and fuel secure for the time being. And that's good. That probably puts you ahead of most people. So congratulations for reading the writing on the wall and getting yourself ready. Be safe over there, guys. And let's just say moderate your consumption, because you're going to have to make the stuff last. And don't think for 1 second the government is going to be there for you. The government is there for the government, not for you. Trust me on that one, folks. And by the way, just out of curiosity, you guys, it's the weekend is coming up. And thank you again, Cormac, for the support of the channel. But we got this weekend coming up. We're probably going to talk to family and friends. We're going to hang out with folks. And, if you're watching this live stream, if you watch this channel regularly, you probably stay up on current events, right? You're a little more in the know than the average person, probably, right? which, to be honest with you, I'm a little envious of the average person because they don't worry about this stuff as much as I do. This can wear on you at times. Consuming this much news, it does wear you out sometimes. Just ask them. You bump into some guy, friend. He's a nice guy, right? He's a hardworking guy, makes a decent living. He just doesn't follow the news. Just ask people how many folks. Did you hear about that pipeline this week, or did you hear about Nord Stream? I'm curious. How many people have no idea what just happened? That what happened this week, or let alone understand the historical enormity of what just happened this week, that pipeline being hit. Because you cannot overstate how important that was. Just gauge people. You don't have to depress them. You don't have to suck the air out of the room like I do at parties. You don't have to like paint this doom and gloom picture. Just kind of gauge. I don't think people have any idea what's coming their way. I really don't. They're just, yeah. You're talking to mom, you're talking to dad, or you're talking to some cousin or somebody of yours. Just, hey, did you hear about that pipeline thing? I wonder how many people actually heard about it, because the news didn't cover it very much, at least not here in the States. I had to go hunting for it. It wasn't jumping out at me. No Cheeseburger. I have not read The Creature from Jekyll Island yet. It is on the list. I read too many news, man. I read too many articles. I look at too many charts. I'm telling you, I'm like bleeding out of the eyeballs by the end of the day. And Mish, I'm not kidding, am I? How many times did you get a phone call from me like 9 p.m.? Hey, did you see this chart? Oh, shoot. I
Yeah.
just realized it's 9. I'm sorry, Mish.
Yeah, we it's going the other way too. I find something at 11 o'clock at night here, and it's midnight there. I'm like, oh crap.
Oh, yeah, you just send that over. You send that right over. My phone's always on silent anyway. I mean, I got this thing here that gets loud if I need it to get loud. So, like, my phone's always on silent, but I get a lot of notifications. I can't
Actually,
not have my
I
phone
sent
on
Jack
silent.
the crash of the British pound. I think at midnight on Friday.
Yep, you were out in front of that one. You caught that like within minutes of that happening. That was impressive. And it's got. I tell you, every channel needs a Mish. I don't know how these other YouTubers do this without Mish. You consume so much data on behalf of the channel. You have no idea how much Mish adds to this channel. You really. He hangs out in the background quietly and he chimes in when he needs you. But trust me, there is a lot more going on there, folks. Every channel needs a Mish. All right, but what else does Cheeseburger? He says central bankers always benefit and encourage wars. That they do, just like politicians. And yes, something I won't repeat because it'll probably get my channel in trouble if I repeat it. They are a bunch of those. But thank you, Cheeseburger. I appreciate the support of the channel. And yeah, that's another thing. Somebody mentioned Greg Manarino before, another channel I really like and I watch all the time. And he's been saying this for more than a year now, that we are being marched off to war. That, the way he says, crisis to crisis to crisis. He's been saying it for a while. And man, was he right. Man, was he right about that, because it is playing out exactly the way he called it. I mean, we're being marched off to war. And like, go back, watch some historical documentaries about the weeks and months leading up to the start of World War I and World War II. And the similarities are just mind boggling. People need history books, man. People need history books. But thank you very much, Cheeseburger, again, for the support of the channel, sir, as always. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the geopolitical mess of what's going on here. I want to talk about a couple things. And, check out this. This is from Javier Blas. This one came up he is the commodities expert over at Bloomberg. All right. He's a great channel to follow on Twitter, by the way, a great feed. I highly recommend that. He's saying Norway makes a show of force around its oil and gas assets, publishing a number of photos of F-35 fighter planes and warships patrolling the North Sea. The Norwegian armed forces have increased their visibility and presence, it says in a statement. And here's some of these pictures. There's F-35s patrolling around an oil platform. Do you see the messaging here? Energy is a target, folks. Energy is on the chessboard now. This looks like either a frigate or a destroyer patrolling around. This is an LNG import terminal, maybe? I don't know what that facility is. Maybe that's an oil refinery in the background. I guess it looks like a refinery.
On whether or not it depends on who you ask on whether or not that's a frigate or destroyer.
That's right. We'd call it a destroyer. They'd probably call it a frigate, right?
Actually, flip it around, but yeah.
Oh, okay. It has to do with tonnage and displacement, right? That's something to do with that. Our destroyers are a little bigger than their frigates are, or vice versa. What else we got? There's another one. That's more of a patrol ship, or maybe something we definitely call a frigate. Again, there's an oil platform in the back. Naval resources, naval assets, with energy infrastructure in the background, right? They are protecting the energy. Message received. Why? Because the Nord Stream pipeline was attacked. Energy infrastructure is now a legitimate target. All right. That was a big deal. Now, let me move beyond that because there were some big developments today, some really big developments. And, I see a lot of people, especially some of the more partisan folks on Twitter, and they're just rushing to judgment here and they're making these statements and they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what this really means. Ukraine applies for NATO membership and rules out Putin talks. This is in Reuters dated today. Ukraine seeks fast track membership of NATO. Russia has sought to prevent Ukraine joining the alliance. Remember, most of the pretext that Russia has used for the invasion has been the expansion of NATO eastward. All right. And that's one of the demands of the Russians has always been that Ukraine will never join NATO. And of course, Ukraine is saying, well, we won't make that decision under threat. You can't force us or bully us into making that decision. That's kind of like the two sides of this argument here. President Zelensky announced a surprise bid for fast-track membership of the NATO military alliance on Friday and ruled out talks with Vladimir Putin, striking back at Moscow after it said it had annexed 4 Ukrainian regions. Zelensky signed the NATO application papers in an online video, clearly intended as a forceful rebuttal to the Kremlin after Putin held a ceremony in Moscow to proclaim the 4 partially occupied regions as annexed Russian land. And there's the story about this. Ukraine, defiant Putin proclaims Ukrainian annexation and vows a war win, also dated today. A defiant Vladimir Putin proclaimed Russia's annexation of a swath of Ukraine in a pomp-filled Kremlin ceremony. I believe the word was pageantry that I used, Mish, in our conversation earlier. I watched this video in the Putin. It struck me as pageantry.
What struck me is the people's faces in the audience. They weren't overjoyed. They weren't with rapture. They were like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, they know it is not going according to plan over there, right? It's obviously not going well. So, and maybe they realize what this means. All right. They're promising Moscow would triumph in a special military operation against Kyiv, even as his troops face potential defeat. All right. So here's why this is such a big deal. So you have got Russia has annexed a big chunk of Ukraine, right? They held these sham elections. 99.99% of people said, I want to be part of Russia. Of course they did, with Russian guns pointed at them. And then Russia said, okay, you're now part of Russia. And then Ukraine says, I want to join NATO immediately. Which, by the way, I think it was Sweden, said they're like, welcome. So this has not been ruled out. And then Ukraine said, we will not hold any talks as long as Vladimir Putin is president. So first, a couple of things here. Understand, NATO, the premise of NATO, Article 5, is that an attack against one is an attack against all. If you attack any one NATO member country, you attack every single NATO member country. All right? This list is NATO member countries. Now, I'm not sure, this is not up to date, right? Because, who is it? Sweden and Finland have both applied. All right? You can add Sweden and Finland to this list very soon. Have they been actually approved, Mish? Do you know?
Yes, they've been approved.
So they've been approved. So you can add Sweden and Finland to this list. So these two areas here, they're also shaded in. All right. So if Ukraine is admitted into NATO, then instantaneously, every single country in this shaded list is now at war with Russia. Just reading a few of these off. Canada, Iceland, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Portugal, France, Italy, Spain, Slovenia, Croatia, Slovakia, Greece, Albania, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Germany. This sounds like the freaking Animaniacs song, right? With the guy pointing all over the freaking globe. But wait, there's more. Because Russia has their own little mini NATO going on over there. They call it the Collective Security Treaty Organization, or the CSTO. Not as big an alliance, not as impressive in population and firepower, but still an alliance. And still, an attack against one is attack against all. Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And before you laugh about the stands, keep in mind, we, United States, mighty America, just got embarrassed by one of the stands after a decade of war, didn't we? I'm not in a hurry to ship people off to the stands again. On this side, I don't know about you guys. Pretty sure nothing good is going to come out of sending troops to the stands again. And again, an attack against one is an attack against all. Now remember, Russia just annexed big chunks of Ukraine. So if NATO lets Ukraine in, then instantly all these NATO troops are treaty bound to come to Ukraine's aid and recapture that territory from Russia. But according to Russia, that's Russian territory. So then they can activate their own version of Article 5. And then instantly that's an attack against all of the CSTO organizations. And now you've got 40 countries around the world are at war with each other. That's what was just set in motion. And if Ukraine is admitted into NATO, that's what happens. And I'm reading these partisan imbeciles on Twitter today are saying things like, if you oppose letting Ukraine in NATO, you're a freaking traitor. Sorry, I don't want to run off to World War III. I'm not willing to leave my wife and kids and go bleed in Europe. I'm not going to send somebody else to do it for me. So, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I don't like to watch Ukrainians suffer. I don't like Vladimir Putin. But I don't want World War III. And these Americans, this is like highly educated academic Americans are saying, you're a traitor if you oppose this. My God, have you stopped to think about what you're talking about? Who is making these decisions? And that's a perfectly legitimate question. All right. I have to say, folks, there's now hours and hours of footage of President Geritol trying to figure out which side of the stage he's supposed to exit, trying to shake hands with people that aren't there, talking to freaking dead people. Who's in charge? If it was us that blew up that pipeline, who made that decision? That man doesn't know which side of the stage to walk off of. He did not make that decision. So who's walking us into war with all the stands in Russia? Who is dragging some 40 countries around the world into this conflict? Who is the name at the top of the organization making this call? I don't know. Mish, check me here. Am I getting myself in trouble? Did I just get a shadow banned again?
No, I don't know about shadow band. I think there's a fine line there where we're at.
Am I approaching it?
Maybe in a week you will be. But I think we're okay. We're ahead of it right now.
You guys in the chat, Mish doesn't just moderate you guys. He moderates me. He is the mod of mods. So look, folks, this is what happened today. This is all set in motion today. The CSTO NATO collision was set in motion. Like decades of advances towards world peace. Like we're right back in the Cold War. The Cold War, like Cuban Missile Crisis. We're right back where we started, man. All right, I got a few more of you guys in here. Thank you very much, Mike Robin RC Models. He says, talk to our local electric utility guys yesterday here in South Germany. They already worked out a plan. What gets switched off first? No joke. I don't want to give away the whole interview, but I just did an interview with Wall Street Silver yesterday. Probably be up in a couple of days, but keep an eye on that channel. Subscribe to Wall Street Silver if you don't already, folks, and tell them nobody sent you. But we were talking about some things that might get shut off in Europe this winter and what it might mean for the shiny. And
I think it's very important to have a plan, though. So
yeah,
when people say they have a worked out plan, I hope so.
Yeah, and always have a plan just in case you are on the wrong side of that plan, Mike. They have a plan doesn't necessarily mean you have power. You might be on the wrong side of that plan. I hope things work out for you, brother. I really do. I know you got businesses over there, and I know you live over there. I really hope things work out for you. I hate to see what is happening to you guys. I pray that your leaders come to their senses and our leaders come to their senses, whoever our leaders are, whoever is yanking these strings, I hope it's not too late to change your mind. This doesn't have to happen. And keep in mind, like, we have been so desensitized, especially here in the States, right? War is just something like, oh, that's like the people who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks and didn't go to college. They go off and fight, not us. It's just the poor people. They go fight, but they don't even really fight, right? It's just guys in chairs hit buttons on a keyboard and they send a missile over the horizon. Nobody's really endangered. No, that's not how it goes. This will not be a chair war. This will not. Our capacity for wholesale violence has only improved since the last time we engaged in it. This needs to stop. This needs to stop fast. Mike, I hope things work out for you, brother. Thank you very much for everything you do for the channel. And there's my man Zarkos, who was bathing in champagne the last time we talked, Zarkos. I hope things are still going so well. Thanks again for your videos. I wish good luck to everybody. Winter is coming. Yes, it is, unfortunately. The Starks are always right eventually, as they say in Game of Thrones. Winter is coming. It's almost here, man. Tomorrow's October, isn't it? 30 days in September. Wow.
I'm telling people, man, it is 45 degrees where I am. That's kind of no joke.
Yep.
This early in the season.
Yep. So, yeah, folks, I mean, we've had time. We've been talking about this a lot. We've been talking about what this winter could mean. We've been talking about food shortages, energy shortages. I hope you guys have been taking some of this advice, getting yourselves ready. Maybe a little bit of propane. Man, I'm butchering words. Protein, a little bit of gasoline, a little bit of rice and beans, right?
All the eans.
Yeah, hey, I tell you, people made fun of me and they were laughing at me. People come up to me, especially at Silver Symposium, like, what do you recommend we buy? And, I said, look, strong dollar and everything. There's like rice and beans. Stocks don't look good. Metals are going down. Commodities are going. Everything's going down. We've got asset deflation. Rice and beans. And I did the video. I ran the numbers. Rice and beans are up a whole heck of a lot more than anything else is. So I hope you guys are taking advantage of it. Thanks again, Zarkos, for the support of the channel, sir. Thank you guys, all you guys, for your generosity and your support. And thank you, by the way, to my Patreon supporters, guys. I know you're out there also. Appreciate everything you guys do for the channel. I also, when he says, I meant winter equals war, says Zarkos again. Yeah, I kind of knew what you meant. For those who didn't watch Game of Thrones or read Game of Thrones, winter is coming is the motto of House Stark. And they live up north where the winters are cold, so winter is coming is like this warning of hey, it's going to get cold, but it also means bad things are coming, bad things on the horizon, and we're always ready for it. What's up, Mitch?
Trouble is on the horizon.
Yes, trouble is on the horizon. Exactly. Yeah, and when you say winter and war, and also keep in mind, we're talking about the Russians here, folks. Historically, winter has been a weapon of war for the Russians. They used it to great effect against the Germans, and they used it to great effect against Napoleon. So do not underestimate the weaponization of winter. And right now, weaponizing winter means weaponizing energy. So again, this is the historical parallels here are striking. The weaponization of winter, the weaponization of energy, like, man, it's bad. All right. Let's see. We got one more minute to close. Let's see what the indexes are doing right now. S&P is down 51 points, or 1.42%, just barely off the lows of the day that it hit a few seconds ago. Ended up being a pretty bad day for the S&P. The Dow ended up closing down 500. What a just awful week for the Dow. After an awful week last week. Remember, we had that sudden 1,000-point live stream last week. Now at 28,724, down 1.71% for the day. And NASDAQ broke through that low, 10,575, closing at down 161 points or 1.51%. Look out below, folks. That was our support level.
Goodbye.
Broke it. We just took out our June lows in the NASDAQ. So maybe we retest, maybe we bounce back up a little bit. But even if we do get a little bit of rally, there is limited upside to a bear market rally. And there's a whole lot of downside if this bear market continues. So, all right, not good there. Not good. All right. Now, we talked a lot about the geopolitical situation, and we talked a lot about what's going on in Eastern Europe. But there's a whole other aspect of this geopolitical energy situation that I want to get into here. And this is a big one. I'm going to try to get through this one a little faster because this is big and I know we're running short on time. OPEC Plus has begun talks on an output cut at their October 5th meeting, according to a source. We hypothesized about this, or we theorized about this last week, that OPEC's production was so far below their production targets that it was laughable, and that they were angry about the SPR dumping, and that they were not going to tolerate these low oil prices, and that an OPEC cut was probably coming. And boy, were we right about that. Because check this one out. Leading OPEC Plus members have begun discussions about an oil output cut at the group's next meeting on October 5th, which is next Wednesday, I think. October 5th is next Wednesday. One OPEC source told Reuters a cut was likely, while two other OPEC sources said key members had spoken about the topic. A source familiar with Russian thinking told Reuters earlier this week that Moscow could suggest a cut of up to 1 million barrels per day. That's huge. That is a huge production cut. And that could be a few days away. So I did something today. I did a thing. All right. And you Patreon guys, thanks again for your support of the channel. I was talking about this with the Patreon folks earlier today. I'm calling the oil bottom. All right. If we are not at the bottom at this moment, we are within days of the bottom. Because a 1 million barrel cut, we get anywhere near that number, oil going to rally. But wait, there's more. I'm doing an infomercial here. Global gas to oil fuel switching to jump. Now, this is old. This is a couple of weeks old, just at the start of September. This is in S&P Global. They're saying gas to oil switching could jump 80% as European and Asian gas prices soar. This was before the pipeline blew up, all right? This was before the big spike in prices, all right? So this is only worse now. Switching to account for 633,000 barrels per day of demand growth in the first quarter of 2023. So we've got a 1 million barrel per day production cut potentially coming up next week. We have got 633,000 barrels per day in new demand. Oh, and keep in mind the U.S. is still dumping 1 million barrels per day from the SPR. That's going to end as soon as the midterms are over. So you're talking about a 2.6 million barrel per day swing towards a tighter oil market. That's coming in the next few weeks to few months, or I'll say few days to months, right? This could start as early as October 5th and then run into November. So I am calling the bottom in oil. Now, keep in mind, this is daily oil demand, right, going back years. And I went all the way back to the global financial crisis. I wanted to see how much demand destruction we got from the GFC, because we could have another GFC next week. It could happen. It could start over the weekend. Who knows? Things are happening fast. And that's one thing that's bearish for energy. So I wanted to see what that was like. And we had a peak of 86.3 million barrels per day of oil demand in 2007. And we went as low as 84.3 million barrels per day in 2009. So we lost about 2 million barrels per day of oil demand during the global financial crisis, which ended up being like 2.3, 2.4%. So look, folks, even if we have another global financial crisis, there is enough demand from the oil switching and enough supply destruction from the SPR dumping going away and from the OPEC production cuts to entirely offset another global financial crisis. That's how much tighter the oil market is about to get. And that's if this geopolitical situation doesn't get worse, which we just spent almost an hour talking about how much worse it's going to get. So today I called the bottom in oil. Now, technically, it's not a perfect call, right? The technicals are still telling me we haven't gotten like a retest of this low yet. I don't think we're going to retest that low. I don't think so. I think oil has already run way too far, way too low, too fast. And by the way, the last time we broke below this line in the RSI, this is the relative strength index, a measure of momentum. The last time we broke below this line, which we did a few days ago, was, well, a couple of days away from the bottom, back in November. We broke below that line and we bottomed out 3 days later. So if the bottom is not already in, the bottom is days away. And with that OPEC meeting coming up on Wednesday, I'd say the bottom is Tuesday at the latest. Very little downside from here, a whole lot of upside for oil prices. And again, even if another GFC were to happen and we were to have millions of barrels per day of demand destruction, the supply situation is going to get even worse to offset that. So these prices are going higher. OPEC has told us they will send prices higher. And on top of that, oh, this is good. This will go lovely with our geopolitical mess that we have going on. U.S. imposes new sanctions on Iran oil exports and targets Chinese firms. Sure, we've already got 40 countries on the brink of war, right? Remember, there's the NATO map and the CSTO map. It just wouldn't be a world war if we didn't create a whole new theater of operations. So let's see if we can bring the Middle East in on this mess because, hey, you've got a tyrannical dictatorship in Iran that's already on the brink of collapse because they beat women to death for showing their hair. Let's poke them a little bit more. They're already desperate. And as we've talked about on this channel, when you're desperate, starting a war with some external enemy is a last-ditch attempt to squash dissent in your own country. So, yeah, this is a great time. Let's poke Iran, too. Again, who's making this decision? Who is making this decision? It is not the man who does not know which side of the stage to walk off of. Have you seen how confused he gets walking off the stage? Do you think he's capable of weighing the pros and cons of this? Exit stage right. Or this. Who's making these decisions? We deserve to know. History books are being written. Somebody needs a name to put down and say the decision was made by, and it was not him. Anyways, the United States on Thursday imposed sanctions on companies it accused of involvement in Iran's petrochemical and petroleum trade, including 5 based in China, pressuring Tehran as it seeks to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. So we talked about this in some live streams over the past few weeks. The Iran nuclear deal has fallen apart. We were close to a deal, and then the Iranians changed their terms. They wanted more. We wouldn't give it to them. So the deal is gone. New sanctions are coming, and I just want to remind you folks that we were talking about LNG earlier. Jose Orozco made that comment, will LNG from the U.S. come to save Europe? And I said, not just the U.S., Qatar and Australia. Qatar is the second biggest producer of liquefied natural gas in the world, and all of it flows through the Strait of Hormuz. All of it. So everybody's worried about oil. If the Strait of Hormuz gets closed, and they don't realize that will cut the size of the global LNG market by something like 28 to 35%. I forget how much of global LNG comes from Qatar.
Right about
but that
a
will
third.
make Europe, what was that, Mish?
Right about a third.
Right about there? So that will make the global natural gas situation even tighter. And we just provoked the Iranians again. So not only would that send oil over $200 a barrel, but that would send natural gas even higher in Europe. That would make things even worse in Europe. Not to mention create a whole new theater of operations.
Inserting here, we're about 4 short on chats. The next one is Harry Dan 2.
All right, let me get to him. Thank you, Mish. Where are you, Harry Dan 2?
Tunes and More, otherwise known as Harry
Oh,
Dan
there he
2.
is. Harry Dan 2, the man from TradingView who programmed the MMMRI. He says 45F. It was 31F at my place. Oh, 45 Fahrenheit. It was 31F at my place. All right, we're talking temperatures, Harry Dan.
Yeah, he's responding to being.
Crazy.
I said it was cold here. He said it's nothing like my cold.
Yeah. Crazy GOE events still blowing my mind more than the frost. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Harry Dan. I mean, every day I just think, like, what could they do to make things even worse? And that's what they've done. And, you know, we were just talking about, you know, blowing your mind. And I always imagine what's the worst thing that could happen. It's part of my nuclear training. I literally wore a lanyard around my neck next to my badge for 15 years, and there was a little card on it that said, what's the worst thing that could happen? All right. And I was required to read that and ask myself before I did anything in the plant. Like, it's part of the nuclear training is to imagine the worst possible outcome to make sure it doesn't happen. And short of a nuclear bomb going off somewhere in the world, I think Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz would be the worst possible scenario for everyone on the planet. I think it would be that bad. It would cause such a spike in energy prices, which would cause such a mess in food and fertilizer, and there would be suffering in every corner of the world if that happened. And we're poking them. We're poking them. Things are already messy over there, and they're already desperate, and we just made it worse. Don't mess with desperate people. Desperate people are dangerous, even if they're not as big and tough as you. The fact that they're desperate makes them dangerous. So, thank you, Harry Dan, too. Thank you for the support of the channel, and it blows my mind as well, sir. And there is M&J, says DVN talk. All right. I'll talk about DVN because I did mention that I bought Devon Energy on my Patreon. That is the way I play the oil. I actually did a couple of things. I bought shares in Devon Energy, or DVN, because I did trade the oil trade today when I called the bottom. When I make a call like that, I put my own money where my mouth is. Again, not a financial advisor, not financial advice. Do your own research, your own DD. Arrive at a decision that's right for you. I like Devon Energy for a couple of reasons. I like this dividend. Here it was 30 cents, and then 34 cents, 49 cents, 84 cents, $1, $1.27, $1.55. I like the trajectory of that dividend on Devon Energy. Now, keep in mind, Devon Energy's payout ratio is very high. So Devon needs oil prices to go higher. All right. But I did a video for my Patreon group a little while ago, and I liked Devon because their performance during the crash in oil prices over the last couple of months, they went down less than some of the other ones did. And during the run-up in oil prices, they did better than most of the other ones did. So as far as all the energy plays go, I like the risk-reward profile of a company like Devon Energy. I also like the technicals on Devon Energy because, as you can see, we just came and dipped down below. This is the 200-day moving average here. We came back below, retested, and broke right above it. And this is the Bravo 9, as they call it. The 9-day moving average is the more curvy one here. And you can see this is coming down to touch the 200-day moving average. The last time it did so, it bounced up pretty significantly from there. And if you can see, like going back a good year or so, when Devon comes down and touches its 200-day moving average, it tends to get a pretty good bounce off of there. So I like the technical setup on this one. I like the risk-reward profile, so I bought some Devon Energy. That was my how I traded the oil, the bottom in oil. And again, I bought shares in this one. I also bought some call options in ERX, which is kind of like swinging for the fences. That was a much more risky trade. ERX is a levered ETF, and call options in that is a levered. So that one, it was a very small position. That was a lot riskier of a trade. That is just in case OPEC blows up the market next week with a 1 million barrel cut and the price rockets. I'm positioned to make the most of that. But that was a very small position. Most of my trade went into shares in Devon Energy. Thank you very much, M&J. I appreciate the support of the channel. And I hope I answered your question as to why I chose DVN over some of the other ones. And there's Cheeseburger again. He says, Jack Gamble, the Billy Mays of Doom. I am the Billy Mays of Doom. Okay, I'll take Billy Mays. Jack Gamble here for my doom and gloom. You're going to love my doom and gloom. For just 5 easy payments in $19.99, you can have doom and gloom. And you can even turn a screen door into a rowboat with it. I don't know. I think I butchered that. That was my impromptu Billy Mays. It was awful, but thank you very much, Cheeseburger. And by the way, folks, I also do weddings and bar mitzvahs.
It was horrible. Don't ever do that again.
Horrible. Don't ever do it again. You got it. Rest in peace, Billy Mays. Thanks for the infomercials. And Zarkos, thank you very much for the super chat. He says, only Brits, U.S., and French could destroy the Nord Stream pipelines. Imagine the consequences if it was proven. Yeah, I know. We were talking about that a lot. I just hope it wasn't us. That's all. I hope it wasn't us. EU people versus the USA or versus the UK, or EU implodes if that was us, the French. You know, honestly, I don't know where to go with this one. I really don't. I just wish we were better. I just wish we were all better than this, Arcos. I don't know what to tell you, and I really hope it wasn't us, because it was an evil act. Whoever did it, and whatever their reasons were, it weaponized the suffering of innocent people, and it wreaks economic and thus humanitarian harm on huge swaths of the population, people who are not directly involved in this conflict, people who are non-combatants, weaponizing the suffering of civilians should be off limits. I just wish we were better than that. Apparently, we're not. But thank you very much, Zarkos. I appreciate the support of the channel, and I echo your sentiment. It's ugly. Whatever it was, it's ugly, man. It's a mess. Hey, Mike Bender from Robin RC Models. Buy food, gold, silver, and Bitcoin. I like all those things. I do. I nibble on all of them. Things usually get worse before they get better, and I do think they're going to get worse, Mike. He says, let's just hope central banks screw up before CBDCs are coming. Oh, man, don't even get me started on CBDCs. Like, look how
before you get started on CBDCs, I got about.
Yeah, I know, Mish. If you got to jump, go ahead, brother. I remember what we talked about.
All right, everybody. Cheers. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mish. So CBDCs, like they haven't messed up the world enough, right? I mean, they haven't made a big enough mess of things, and now let's turn over absolute and total control of the money. Let's let them program our own consumption. That's a great idea. Are you kidding me? They think folks. If you have any candidate at any level of public office and you have an opportunity to ask that individual a question, ask them about this. Ask them about CBDCs, for it or against it. And if you get anything but categorically against, consider casting your vote elsewhere. That's all I can say. Anybody who is in favor of this will not do good things in office, because I cannot warn you enough. CBDCs are a tyrant's absolute dream come true. All right. Nero, Caligula, Stalin, all the worst of history. The guy with the H, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to get my channel flagged. That guy, you know, the guy with the thing, him? Yeah, him too. They would have loved CBDCs. Oh, the things they could have done with that. Never, ever, ever. Absolutely not. Thank you, Mike Bender, for your support of the channel, as always, sir. And above my pay grade. What's going on above my pay grade? He says, love it, bro. Good analysis. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Check out Above My Pay Grade's channel on YouTube, by the way, folks. I've been enjoying your channel a lot lately, brother, and keep up the good fight, man. You got to warn people about these CBDCs and everything else that's going on. I love your message. Keep at it, brother. I know it eats up a lot of time. I've been there, but it's worth it. It's a good time. Thanks again, Above My Pay Grade. Appreciate the support of the channel, bud. Man, you guys are awesome today. I can't keep up with these things. Cheeseburger says it was the West. I'm inclined to agree with you. I just hope it wasn't. It says, just like the sinking of the Lusitania, Gulf of Tonkin, they'll tell us the truth in 30 years when no one cares anymore. Yeah, you know, that's another thing. I saw Doomberg. You mentioned the Lusitania, the Gulf of Tonkin. If I might, I would also add the Maine, which was an American ironclad that mysteriously blew up in Havana and led to the Spanish-American War. You mentioned the Lusitania. You know, if you're looking to start a war, sinking a ship is a real good way to do it, isn't it? And I heard Doomberg mention this in one of his interviews this week. He says, you know, this is about the time, historically speaking, that an LNG tanker would hit an iceberg. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Remember, we've been saying energy's now a target. Energy's now fair game. Imagine what the natural gas price would do if an LNG tanker sank under mysterious circumstances now. I hope we're better than this. And Cheese, I echo. I hope you're wrong about that. I hope you're wrong about that, Cheeseburger. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I hope you are. And they'll tell us the truth in 30 years when nobody cares anymore. Yeah, that is par for the course. That's pretty much how they roll. I don't think we may never know in our lifetime who blew up that pipeline. We may never know. And here's Dan Hedin. Thank you, Dan. He says, you're going to make me say his name for 5,000, Alex. They run the world. Maybe they did it. Everybody look at the screen, read that name. I don't want to say it. Mish is like, I just had to sign off because he had a thing going on. We talked about it. He's like, oh, I hope he doesn't mention them while I'm not there to rein him in. Every time I mention that organization, the organization of which he is the head, every time I mention that organization, nothing good happens to my channel for 30 days. I get no new subscribers. My view counts go down. Something mysteriously bad happens to my channel every time I discuss that name. I hate to allow censorship, but look, this channel is my thing. Like, I love this channel. I want to grow this channel. This is how I want to make my living. And I can't talk about that. They won't let me talk about that. But yeah, the FEW backwards, the few. Absolutely. I would not put it past them. They need a crisis to seize more power, Dan. And I wish I could talk about it more. I really do. I hate that happens because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be said. I'm working on ways to say it. All right, guys. There's one more big story I got to get to today. I can't sign off without talking about this one. I'll probably do a video about this later, but I wanted to mention it. China tells state banks to prepare for a massive dollar dump and yuan buying spree as Beijing's prior interventions have failed to stem its currency's worst year since 1994. Now, earlier this month, the People's Bank of China, the PBOC, their central bank, they told their smaller banks, we are going to reduce your foreign currency reserve requirements. Basically said, if you guys want to sell some dollars, that's okay, we'll allow it. And now a few weeks later, they're saying, you guys, get ready to sell your dollars. Do it now. So China is going to start doing what Japan is doing, dumping dollars, probably selling U.S. treasuries to get those dollars in order to sell the dollar, drive the dollar lower, and buy their own currency to drive their currency higher because the yuan has been in free fall this year. So this is going to add even more liquidity stress to the U.S. Treasury market, even more. This is also going to probably result in a little bit more of a pause in the U.S. dollar's run, the DXY. And that's another reason it's another reason why I'm calling the bottom in oil. Because of this currency intervention in China, look at what the dollar has done this year. This is the DXY's chart. Look at how it has run. It's due for a pullback. It ran too hard, too fast. Nothing goes up forever. The dollar has to come down, at least temporarily. Now, the yuan is not a direct input to the dollar, but the selling of the dollar to buy the yuan is still going to drive the Dixie lower. It will have indirect knock-on effects. It's going to drive the Dixie lower. So another trade I made today, I bought puts in UUP. Let me bring up UUP. UUP is a ETF that tracks the DXY. And I bought puts in this one, so I am shorting the dollar. And that's another reason why I'm going long oil, because if the dollar goes lower, oil prices are denominated in dollar. That's going to put upward pressure on oil prices as well. So I also bought puts in this UUP ETF. And, looking at this is going back to about the beginning of the year, about November of last year. You see, we've kind of been in this band here. We've been moving up in this band this whole time. And now we broke way out of it. And now we're coming back down. We're going to head into this band here. Now, China is not saying we want to drive UUP back into this channel. China is saying we want to turn this trend back downward. So China's the second biggest economy in the world, and they're going to start dumping their dollar reserves. And I had the chart up here. Where is it? China has something to the tune of $3 trillion worth of foreign currency reserves. Now, those are not all dollars. That's the dollar value of all of their forex reserves. That's dollars, euros, yen, all of it. It's a good bet half of that at least is USD. So China's got a lot of dollars to dump, not as many as Japan, but they have a lot of dollars to dump. Their banks could start selling them. That's going to drive the DXY and this UUP index lower. So that's why I bought puts in the UUP. It's another reason why I went long oil. Another reason why I'm calling the bottom in oil right now, because I think the dollar is so ridiculously technically overextended, it's got to come down at least temporarily. All right, did I miss somebody here? I think I did miss one. Here we go. I've got my man Cheese again. Says we need code names for the FEW shills. I vote we go for K. Agent K equals, okay. I don't know if I want to say that on. I don't know what that means. Is that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say that. Cheese, you're going to get me in trouble, man. You can't just drop a word like that. See, if I would have read that, I said it really slow in here. It took me a minute. I'm about as sharp as wet leather right now. Yeah, we're not going to call him that, although he might be one. We're not going to call him that. We can call him K. The K laws. But, yeah, we do need a code name for him. Thanks again, Cheeseburger, for everything you're doing for the channel, bud. I appreciate it. And Zarkos is back and says, sorry, I missed the first 30 minutes. What about UK imploding this weekend or next week? This weekend or next week? The UK story is not done, Zarkos. I didn't talk too much about the UK right now because I did videos about that. I think the big takeaway of the UK story is that make sure you understand that's not limited to the UK, all right? The UK is just first. the pensions in the rest of Europe, the pensions in the US, they use that same LDI strategy. All right. So that feedback loop of selling treasuries to raise cash collateral for these interest rate swaps that are underwater, the US pensions are vulnerable to that too. That could happen. And if Mish was here right now, Mish would be saying what happens in Europe happens in the US 4 to 6 weeks later. So that's Mish's timeline. I haven't studied it that long, but I hear that in my head right now when he says it. So the key takeaway to that UK situation is that exact thing could happen here in the States. So if you see a big blowout in US borrowing costs very suddenly, know that the pensions are at risk. And pension managers in the US are scrambling right now to figure out what to do if that happens. Coming soon to a pension near you. And remember, pensions are just IOUs, folks. They're just debt. They are unfunded liabilities, unfunded obligations, the very top of Exter's pyramid. All right. And all the way down at the bottom, the base of Exter's pyramid, gold and silver. So hedge your position accordingly. And I'll always feel welcome to go back and watch those first 30 minutes, Arcos. That's why we record these shows. And I've got Cushing Bear says, if UUP goes down, markets should go up then, along with oil. I wouldn't say markets should go up because markets could also go down for other reasons. But you're right there, Crushing Bear. If UUP goes down, UUP being basically the dollar, if this one goes down, that would put upward pressure on stocks, right? Because the dollar is the denominator of the equation. If the denominator gets smaller, then the value of the fraction gets bigger, right? So you're right. The dollar going down is upward pressure on stocks. It's upward pressure on commodities. Now, I think the prevailing winds in stocks, the economic situation, these absolutely awful earnings that have been coming out, like CarMax yesterday, Nike today, Facebook, the earnings have been just terrible this week. Absolutely terrible things happening in earnings. So I think stocks can still go down even if the dollar goes down. All right. So, but that's a good catch. That is a good catch. If the dollar reverses and pulls back, it's going to put upward pressure on stock prices, but I don't think it'll be enough to change the tide. I hope that makes sense. I think the net forces will still be downward on stock prices for the foreseeable future. But keep in mind, I could be wrong about that one. All right. The dollar basically affects everything right now. The dollar trade has really just crushed any longs. Gold, silver, commodities, they've all been hurt by this surging dollar. But that's also why the whole world is now rallying against the dollar, and started with Japan, and now we're seeing it with China. Who knows what country will do it next? And somebody just came through here. Why isn't it coming up? Where's Jose? Where did your chat go, Jose? Oh, it's not showing up on here for some reason. Oh, Jose Orozco. I'm going to read it, but for whatever reason, it's not showing up in my StreamYard app, and I can't bring it up on the screen. Sorry, brother. Jose says, oh, no, there it is. I skipped over it. Where'd it go? I'm sorry, Jose. There it is. He says, Jose Orozco says, Augustin Karsten's Twinkie blocked me. I want my $100. Is that a Twitter handle? Augustin Karsten's Twinkie block? Twinkie? Augustin Karsten is the head of the Bank of International Settlements, a.k.a. Jabba the Hutt. Yeah, I just love to make fun of Augustin Karstens. He's spearheading the global push for central bank digital currencies. And just take a minute and Google Augustin Karstens and ask yourself, are you comfortable with him deciding how much food you and your kids get during a food shortage? And if the answer is no, oppose central bank digital currencies. Thank you very much, Jose Roscoe. I apologize for missing your super chat. I don't know how I did that. I'm sorry I skipped right over it. But yes, I'm going to have to check out Augustin Karsten's Twinkie. Never seen that one before. All right, guys, look, it's 4:30. I've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. I went longer than I should. Appreciate you guys sticking around for all this time. Again, ask your friends this week. Ask them, hey, did you hear about the pipeline? If you're talking to your family, talking to your relatives, just ask them, hey, did you hear that thing about the pipeline? Just gauge their response. How many people actually know what happened? You don't have to suck the air out of the room. You don't have to depress everybody with World War III is coming. But I'm curious just how uninformed are people. I think, believe it or not, I think most people you talk to have not heard about it, don't know about it, or at best, yeah, I think I heard a little bit. I don't know. I don't think anybody realizes what it means for them, what it means for everybody else. And I'm just curious how much of that is really going on. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you guys for your generosity, your super chats. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. There is a link down in the description below if you feel so inclined. Also, thanks, Mom and Dad, for watching. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Mish, for hanging out. And this is where Mish would tell you to have your pet spayed or neutered or something like that. He always has a good send-off. I'm going to call it a day, folks. Had a great time talking to you today. Look, hard times are coming, folks. They're not here yet. So take the time, enjoy yourselves. Remember these moments. There will come a time when we wish we had it this good again. So with that in mind, have an awesome, awesome weekend. And until next time, live small and dream big.